we have circulated information folders on your chairs. A number of documents are contained in those folders. I will explain to you the relevance of the documentations a little later on. I think what is important at this point to mention to you is that when we extended the invitation for you to attend this meeting, we did indicate that those who would like to suggest additional items to the agenda, that they do so at least a week before this meeting taking place. I just want to note and place it on record that we have not received any additional items to the agenda. For that reason, I assume that the position where we are is that the agenda that we'll be following is adopted. That said, ladies and gentlemen, I will not be doing the formal welcoming. Let me, at this juncture, invite the Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Ms. Elsie Nghikembua, to the podium to make the opening remarks to this first formal engagement of our new commission, and at the same time to do a formal introduction of members of the Electoral Commission. Chairperson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, CEO, Mr. Tavango. Good morning, esteemed members of the Political Party Liaison Committee. Good morning, fellow commissioners, CEO and members of the ECN Secretariat. My name is Elsie Nghikembua, and it's a great honor and privilege for me in my capacity as Chairperson of the Commission to welcome you all to this meeting and make a few remarks. Appearing with me are Commissioner Gershon Waripishieluna. Commissioner, if you can please stand. And Commissioner Evarestus, who both have been members of the Commission since their appointment on the 15th of March 2019 and subsequent reappointment on the 16th of September 2021. I'm equally pleased to introduce and welcome Commissioner Dr. Emerentia Leonard, appointed by His Excellency the President as the member of the Commission for a period of 5 years, effective from the 16th of September 2021. Dr. Leonard and Mr. Rubioram Rukambe were the new additions to the Commission. However, a vacancy has now been created as a result of Mr. Rukambe having recently expressed his unavailability to serve on the Commission due to other international obligations. The Commission has therefore initiated the process of filling the vacancy as per the provisions of the Electoral Act. It is safe to say that political parties and organizations are naturally one of our most important stakeholders in the electoral process, and every opportunity must be taken to ensure that we engage in consultations aimed at setting the Commission strategic objectives and plans for the medium and long term. Against this background, the members of the Commission and Secretariat saw it fit to invite you to this most important gathering so that we highlight the priorities of the current Commission over the next 5 years. It is of vital importance that after every national election, we include you in general consultations on how to improve our electoral framework, amongst many other things. We are all aware that the Electoral Act, Act number 5 of 2014, is our guiding piece of legislation in everything that we do as an elections management body. Based on our experiences of administering this Act, we have noted areas that need to be improved or reviewed. I would like this morning to appraise PLC that the Commission has started with an internal process of identifying areas that need to be reviewed in the Electoral Act. And we are going to engage you at an appropriate time and other stakeholders for your proposals and submissions. Furthermore, since this Commission assumed duty on the 16th of September 2021, we held a 4-day Commission strategic retreat to review our key institutional strategic priorities in preparations for the 2024 General Registration for Voters, or the GRV, and the Presidential and National Assembly elections, as well as the 2025 Regional Council and Local Authority elections. The objective of the Commission retreat was, amongst others, to review proposed amendments to the Electoral Act, deliberate on and adopt the draft institutional decentralization strategy, discuss matters regarding ECN's governance framework, as well as to discuss the ECN's 2022 to 2027 draft strategic plan and the issue of operationalization of the independence of the Electoral Commission. But it was also an opportunity to appraise our new member, Dr. Leonard, on current organizational strategies, as well as an occasion to explore and critically analyze matters that are affecting the institution both strategically and operationally, in order to identify reforms that are practical and workable. It gave an opportunity for reflection, but also an opportunity for introspection, not only on our programs, but also on the institutional capacity to be able to respond effectively towards the successful conduct of our electoral mandate. In light of the above, we will be conducting a series of consultations with Group PLC members as our key stakeholders in order to gather inputs and feedback on the proposed strategic plan and, most importantly, the review of the Electoral Amendment Bill, amongst other equally important institutional documents. The broad consultations that the ECN will embark upon demonstrates our commitment to transparency, professionalism, and openness to share our plans, but also to receive feedback from you, our stakeholders, both internally and externally. We believe the strategic plan and roadmap will contribute to our efforts to continuously transform our institution and improve the delivery of electoral services. The Commission therefore undertakes to use the strategic plan and roadmap as principal guiding documents to implement credible election processes. In the course of organizing and conducting electoral activities, the Electoral Commission has come to appreciate the strong relationship between strategic planning and improved organizational performance in the conduct of elections. The Commission has started with an initiative to operationalize the independence of ECN. Now, you might be wondering what this means in practical terms. That will be highlighted in the presentation that will be done by the CEO at a later stage. The Commission will further this initiative through engaging with our various stakeholders in order to ensure understanding and secure support and cooperation from all sectors in order to realize this objective. As you are aware, PLC members, we successfully executed the Electoral Court order for the recount of Dongalinena constituency elections, and the Commission also successfully conducted the Okoro and Katima urban constituency by-elections, and at the moment we are busy implementing the by-election schedule for the Namangoro constituency in the Tavango West region, slated for the 17th of December 2021. The CEO will also provide details regarding the schedule. On another note, the Electoral Commission has noted with great concern that most political parties have on a number of occasions been reminded by the Commission about the importance of complying with the provisions related to political party financing. The Electoral Act, as it currently reads, sections 139 and 140, demands that political parties submit their declaration of assets and liabilities to the ECN. As the custodian of the Act, the Electoral Commission has a legal obligation, I underscore legal obligation, to ensure that these measures and requirements are implemented. We are once again appealing to the political parties who have not submitted these statements to heed to this call as soon as possible. Our perceived leniency in fully enforcing these measures has come to an end. And this Commission cannot allow this trend to continue. This has become a topical issue, and the fact that some political parties are not complying is defeating the purpose and undermining national efforts of anti-corruption, as highlighted in the final draft National Anti-Corruption Strategy and Action Plan, which placed as its first strategic objective, I quote, increasing the level of political accountability and transparency, end of quote. Other sources are reports and publications by IPPR, African Peer Review Mechanism, focused primarily on political party financing. The Commission is, however, focused on working closely with political parties in addressing matters of mutual interest and concern through this platform. This will go a long way in assisting the Commission to address any apparent hurdles that may pose challenges in our elections. As part of our strategic initiatives, the Commission intends to undertake research aimed at uncovering causes of voter apathy experienced mostly during the regional council elections and subsequent by-elections and local authority elections, hoping that we will secure the necessary funds. Ideally, the Commission is planning to conduct this research in the financial year 2022-2023. The Commission also considers it very important to strengthen civic education, primarily aimed at sensitizing the public and specifically the electorate on the importance of voting as a civic responsibility. All of the above highlighted institutional documents and events will be implemented in an environment where the COVID-19 pandemic will potentially impact all electoral activities as well as the budget. We are all hoping and praying that the situation will improve. Hence, we are expected to review our institutional COVID-19 mitigation strategies with a view to adjust to the likely impact of COVID-19 on electoral processes. Members of PLC, as people who are in charge of an institution that is at the center of our electoral democracy, my colleagues and I, as well as management and staff of the Commission, commit ourselves to deliver credible elections. We call upon you to continue to be our partners in this endeavor and look forward to your valuable inputs and contributions. The Commission extends its gratitude to members of the Secretariat for the hard work and commitment they have exhibited while planning and carrying out Commission assignments, which are characteristically very demanding. I now invite the CEO to provide more details by way of presentations on the key programs and activities as alluded to in my remarks. Thank you for your attention.
As I indicated earlier, we have included a number of documentations in the pack that you found on your chairs. And I just want to inform you which documents those are. Firstly, we have in the pack the agenda for today's meeting engagement. We have also included in there the opening remarks of the chairperson as delivered.
No.
Okay, you should be getting it shortly. It's important that you have the chair's opening remarks on your file of your offices. I think it's important that you have that because it broadly articulates the general plans and the vision of the new commission looking ahead at the next 5 years. In addition to that, we have included in your text a PowerPoint presentation which I'll be presenting soon hereafter. Now, as the chairperson indicated in her remarks, the purpose of today's engagement is to enlighten you on a number of matters. First of all, you will be aware that we are currently implementing a by-election program in the Namangoro constituency of the Tavango West region. I'll share some details with respect to that because we think it is very important to members of the PLC to know what the Electoral Commission is currently busy with. Following that, I will present some information to you concerning issues around regulations of political party funding, with an emphasis on the issue of compliance. Yes, please make sure that you have all the documents, it's very important. Part of my presentation will also look at some of the proposed electoral amendments that we envisage as a commission regarding the current Electoral Act, Act 5 of the year 2014. And lastly, I will share with you some information regarding our strategic planning process, but also some details about the roadmap which the Commission has adopted, basically for the next 5 years, so that you have an understanding in terms of what the Commission will be engaged in going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we recognize the fact that during off-peak periods, it is sometimes difficult to maintain or to have frequent engagements with yourselves. But I think it is important that as this particular year is coming to a close, after having completed the previous electoral cycle, 2019-2020, the Commission feels that it's important that you have an appreciation of what we are planning to do in terms of the programs and the projects as we build up to the year 2024, which is the year when this country will be observing the next major electoral activities, such as the general voters registration, but also the next presidential and national assembly elections, followed subsequently in the year 2025 by the regional and local authority elections. So it's an opportunity for us to inform you what we are currently busy with in respect to our business processes as an organization, issues around institutional capacity building, the legal framework, all of these things. So I want to take you through these things so that when you are at your head offices, you have some understanding, some appreciation, so that you will not feel that the people at the Electoral Commission are just resting on their laurels and nothing is happening. That said, as I've indicated, the first item on the agenda is the Namangoro constituency by-election. We want to inform you that we have successfully completed the supplementary registration exercise. In regard to this particular by-election, it took place from the 12th to the 14th of October. Subsequent to that, we have displayed the provisional voters register for objections on the 19th of October. We are very happy to note here that there were no objections recorded against the provisional voters register. Moving forward, I want to share with you some numbers from the supplementary registration of voters process that I just alluded to. Before the supplementary registration process took place, the voters register for the Namibian Constituency of the Tavango West region stood at 3,607 registered voters. During the process of removing deceased persons, following the SRB process, we did not receive any deceased persons, but we want to inform you that we did remove a number of deceased persons through our collaboration with the Ministry of Home Affairs before the supplementary registration process. But after the supplementary process, there were no deceased persons removed from the roll. And for that reason, following the SRB that took place from the 12th to the 14th, we had recorded a total of 123 new applicants, in addition to about 80 voters who were registered through the change of address facility or provision, which brought the total number of registered voters for this particular constituency to 3,810 registered voters. We also just want to mention to you that we did issue duplicate voter cards to the amount of a total of 85. Usually, when you issue duplicate voter cards to your voters, what that means is that it doesn't change the number of total registered voters, because these are people already in existence on the voters roll. And it was a total of about 85 registered voters. We also want to mention to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we have completed the process of nominations of candidates for this particular by-election. This process, this exercise took place between the periods from the 21st of October, and it was concluded on the 5th of November. We are happy to inform you that we have 5 candidates contesting the Namagoro constituency by-election. Firstly, we have a candidate from the PDM, Popular Democratic Movement, that is Chibango Domingo France. We have an independent candidate, Nyundu Moses. We have a candidate representing the Political Party of Namibia, Rengi Thomas Kavau, followed by another independent candidate, Shindimba Lashislaus Poroto. Very complicated names. And then lastly, we have a candidate representing the IPC, Independent Patriots for Change. That is Shiwana Andreas Kambinda. So we just wanted you to have that information. Moving on, in terms of the key dates for this by-election, we expect to finalize the voters register on the 22nd of November, 2021, and the awarding of the bid for the printing of ballot papers should take place immediately thereafter. That is the 26th of November, 2021. Around the 30th of November, we hope to make available the sample ballot paper to the contesting political parties or their representatives, or the representatives of the independent candidates, so that they can check the correctness of the details on the sample ballot paper. Between the 8th and the 9th of December 2021, we will conduct the training for election agents representing political parties or candidates, as well as members of the Namibian police force who will be deployed to secure the operations of this by-election. The training of our polling officials is scheduled from the 10th to the 14th of December 2021, and the deployment of our polling teams to the various duty stations will take place between the 15th and the 16th of December. That also then includes the distribution of all the required materials, the checking of the correctness of these materials to ensure that everything is distributed in sufficient quantities and that everything works. It takes place during those 2 days. And lastly, the by-election for the Namagoro constituency by-election is scheduled for the 17th of December 2021. And immediately following the conducting of this particular by-election, we would then demobilize our processes from the 18th to the 19th of December 2021. And basically that should then signal the completion of this by-election. So that is it about the Namagoro constituency by-election. It's a key project that we are currently busy with, as I've indicated. I'm now moving on to issues around political party funding. The chairperson, in her opening remarks, touched on this very important issue. It is my duty, as part of my presentation, to highlight a few things to you, to our political parties, as well as our organizations. Because these provisions in the current Electoral Act are there for a reason, and they matter. Now, Section 139 and Section 140, Section 141, Section 158 of the Electoral Act requires registered political parties to submit declaration of assets and liabilities, as well as audited financial statements. We are noting here that most political parties are not complying with the regulations in place, as I've just referred to in those relevant provisions of the Electoral Act. We want to mention to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the issue around funding of political parties and the issues of compliance and taking responsibility for these declarations is a topical issue right now. We have shared in that information packet a report produced by the IPPR which speaks to this particular issue. We also want to mention to you that you may have noted that there is a team from the African peer review mechanism that have engaged with us. The issue around political party finance was a topical issue, and it was also discussed at that particular forum during those engagements, as it relates to the responsibilities of the Electoral Commission. So it's currently a very topical issue. We want to mention to you also that the Electoral Commission, but also the ACC, has an obligation to ensure that political party finance regulations are complied with as part of our strategic objectives targeted towards increasing the level of accountability and transparency, as highlighted in the draft National Anti-Corruption Strategy and Action Plan. So we just really want to mention to you that it is important that political parties really understands these provisions and make themselves fully aware of the implications and the consequences of these provisions in the current Electoral Act. Now, we want to give you a brief summary in terms of our own analysis of around the issue of compliance as it relates to political parties registered with the Electoral Commission. When you look at the first section that is relevant, section 139, in terms of this section of the Act, political parties must submit a declaration of their assets and liabilities. In terms of the frequency, the law states that 60 days after the expiry of the first year after the issuance to it of the registration certificate under section 137(3), or the longer period as the Commission may allow. In terms of our findings, we have noted that in as far as the provisions around section 139 are concerned, we have noted that only 2 Form 33s have been filed by 2 political parties. That is the first observation. In addition to that, on an annual basis, in terms of the frequency of submission, 21 days after the official opening of the National Assembly is also the other prescribed period in terms of the submission of declaration of assets and liabilities. And in respect to that, we noted that political parties did not submit Form 33 annually as required by the Electoral Act. With respect to the provisions of Section 140, it states that every registered political party must maintain at its head office an accurate and permanently maintained record consisting of A, any contribution, donation, pledge of contribution or donations, whether in cash or in kind, made to the political party, and B, a statement of its accounts showing the sources of its funds and the name of every person who has contributed to the fund. In terms of the frequency of making available this information, the law says that once yearly, but not later than 6 months after the end of the political party's financial year. Because in terms of the Electoral Act, we recognize that the financial years of the different political parties do not end at the same time. And for example, they are not even aligned to the end of the national budget financial year, which is 31st of March each year. They differ. So regard should be given to that. But in terms of what we found out is that 12 out of 23 political parties never submitted their audited financial statements since their registration as political parties. Secondly, one of the submitted financial statements had not been audited that we have received. We also noted that political parties are not submitting annually as required by the Electoral Act. In addition to that, no copies of a published version of the newspaper has been filed with the Commission to serve as evidence of compliance. And lastly, political party audited financial statements are submitted after the due date, which is 6 months after their financial year ends. These are some of the issues that we have noted with respect to the various sections of the Act, and these are some of the findings that we have noted. And I'm moving on. With respect to Section 141, a political party, a registered organization, a member of a registered political party or registered organization, or a person who is required in terms of Section 141, subsection 1 of the Act, to disclose donations, must submit details of the donation to the Commission. terms of the frequency, this should occur 60 days after the end of June of every year. Following our analysis, we found out that political parties did not submit Form 34 as required by Section 141 of the Electoral Act. Secondly, details with respect to amounts, sources, and the purpose for such funds of donations indicated in the financial statements are not submitted to the Commission, since political parties do not submit Form 34 where details of such donations are usually indicated. Moving on, the total donation amount that a registered political party or a registered organization or a member of a registered political party or organization or a person contemplated in Section 141, subsection 1 can receive in a financial year may not exceed $4 million Namibian dollars if the donation is received from a Namibian person or a Namibian institution, or exceed $2 million Namibian dollars if the donation is received from a foreign person or a foreign institution. In terms of the frequency of submission, it's 30 days after such monies are donated to a particular political party or a particular organization. In terms of our findings, no donations exceeding the prescribed amounts have been discovered in any of the political parties' financial statements that were submitted. And lastly, with respect to Section 158, in terms of this particular section, a political party to which funds are allocated must submit the auditor's report and audited statements consigned to the Commission and be published, or of course an abridged version of the account will be published in at least 2 daily newspapers circulating in Namibia. In terms of the frequency of submission, we're saying here 3 months after the end of the financial year, and with respect to publishing the abridged version at least within 7 days of submission to the Commission. Our findings are that no allocations of funds to political parties has been suspended by the Commission due to non-compliance as is required by Section 158, subsection 8A of the Electoral Act. So we wanted to give you that general picture, just building on to what the chairperson has stated in her remarks. In terms of the seriousness of these provisions, if you look at the Electoral Act carefully, the Act also prescribes certain punitive measures in terms of what the Commission can do in an instance of non-compliance. One of these measures is so extreme such that the Commission is actually empowered to deregister a particular political party or organization that is not complying. So that is how severe some of these implications could be. So at this juncture, we wanted to give you this picture. I want to mention to you that the Commission is not really in the business of naming and shaming political parties or organizations in terms of who has complied, who has submitted what, who has not submitted what. But it's important that you see the general picture around the issue of compliance or lack thereof. What the Commission would do is that we would be engaging in political parties on an individual basis so that we bring to your attention your status with respect to issues around compliance in relation to these particular sections. You will be reminded in writing, and I think the Commission would come up with specific deadlines so that if we continue to notice non-compliance, please keep in mind that there may be serious consequences. Or keep in mind that the Commission would be left with no choice but to fully apply the punitive provisions as stipulated in the Electoral Act. So that is what we wanted to mention to you with respect to the issues around political party funding and issues around compliance. A process, as alluded to by the Chairperson, that the Commission has already started, commenced with, relating to amendments to the Electoral Act. We want to inform you that the Commission has already started a process of identifying certain areas in the Electoral Act, Act number 5 of 2014. And we want to just take a moment to mention to you some of the areas that we are looking at for possible amendments in the near future. Now, before I take you through these issues, we want to inform you that the process of amending laws runs through several stages. At this point in time, this process is an institutional process within the Electoral Commission, but rest assured that once we have completed our work and once we have something to share with our stakeholders, we will do that, hopefully at some point early next year, so that you can look at the draft, a possible draft amendment bill, and so that you can take your time to go through it and make comments on it, but importantly, so that you can also perhaps suggest your own amendments to the Electoral Act. So rest assured that there will be ample opportunities. What I want to share with you here are just teasers of some of the key areas that we are looking at, that we have identified as part of the process of amending the Electoral Act. The first area relates to registration of voters. We would propose amendments to provide for persons awaiting trial to also register for the regional and local authority councils elections, or to register as voters to be able to participate in those two elections. Secondly, to provide for eligible voters to register for any election during supplementary registration without restricting it to the registration of the election that is pending. I think most of you who have been observing our processes knows exactly what we're talking about here. The law as it currently stands allows eligible voters only to be registered for the particular elections that the ECN is preparing for, and not for other elections. We have reflected on this matter, and we feel that the law should be amended to enable someone coming to a registration point, and at that point, they can qualify or they are eligible for registration for all the 4 elections, so that they are then registered as such. Furthermore, to include the use of a citizenship certificate to prove age when applying for registration as a voter. In addition to that, to remove the specification of 90 and 30 days before specific elections, within which time frame the provisional voters register should be published in the Government Gazette. Moving on, we also envisage to propose amendments with respect to the issue of nomination of candidates for different elections. Firstly, to provide that a candidate cannot be nominated for the regional council as well as for the local authority election or council elections if the election is taking place on the same day. Furthermore, to provide for the withdrawal of a candidate for presidential and regional council elections at any time before the commencement of the election in question. Moving on, We also envisage to propose amendments with respect to nomination of candidates for different sets of elections. First of all, to remove the requirement of 5 additional names to be nominated for the local authority elections. We have reflected on this particular issue, and we have noted the inconvenience it generates to political contestants, but I think also from an administrative perspective, we would suggest that that particular requirement be removed. In addition to that, to allow for the submission of a list of supporters in the case of independent candidates to the returning officer, not later than 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the 5th day before nomination day. Thirdly, to allow for the returning officer to continue the sitting on the last day of nominations until 2 p.m. should a political party or candidate be required to correct any information as part of the nomination process. And then to provide that candidates may not be nominated by more than one political party or organization, or nominated as an independent candidate and as a candidate for a political party and an organization. We would also propose amendments to the Electoral Act relating to the actual process of conducting elections. One such amendment would be to provide for the sealing and safekeeping of ballot boxes used on the day of special voting, to make it clear that the results announced by the presiding officer at the polling stations are preliminary results, to provide for the Commission to rectify any wrong allocations of seats in the local authority or council as a result of the wrong application of the relevant formula that we use, that we execute when we allocate seats. And also to provide for a cut-off time period of 6 months before an election for aspiring political parties and organizations to register a new party or organization. Moving on, to provide for the Auditor General to be tasked with the obligation of ensuring that political parties and organizations comply with sections relating to their accounting of their funds, disclosure and disclosure of donations, etc. Furthermore, to provide for a period of 30 days after any decision, whether by an electoral tribunal or the commission has been taken, to bring an application to challenge the decision. And lastly, to provide for a cut-off time of 24 hours before any election to cease the canvassing of votes. As I've indicated, ladies and gentlemen, these are just but some of the areas that we have already identified for which the Commission will propose or will present possible proposed amendments to the Electoral Act. I also want to mention that what led us to deciding to consider amendments is largely based on our experience when we administer the Act during the electoral processes. And some of you who closely follow this process would agree that some of the things I'm mentioning here are things over which we have had discussions back and forth since the year 2014, but more so during the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections. So all the issues I'm mentioning here, even the issue of canvassing of votes, these are all issues that we will package and present to our stakeholders so that we can solicit your views, your inputs, so that we can have debates around this. But importantly also, I want to mention that the exercise of amending the Electoral Act is not limited between the EC and political parties. It's really a national project. at one stage or the other stakeholders, whether civil society, community-based organizations, what have you, would obviously come on board during the parliamentary hearing process and other processes, so that they can also make an input to the draft electoral amendment bill before it finally goes to the Cabinet Committee on Legislation and before it's finally tabled in Parliament, in the National Assembly. So, as I've indicated, we will do our part, and somewhere early the year 2022, we will have a broad-based consultation with all our stakeholders, because we are fully aware of the fact that you may have your own proposals and suggestions that you may wish to present as part of an amendment process of the Electoral Act. The chairperson did indicate in her opening remarks that there are a number of things that we plan doing between now and the year 2024. But I think importantly, it's important that you understand that we conduct our business on the basis of strategic plans. So for that reason, we have started this process. In fact, where we are now, we are in the last year of the current strategic plan, which we have been operating under for the last close to 5 years now. We are in the process of developing a new strategic plan for the period 2022 until 2027. So the current one expires at the end of March next year. And therefore, we are in the process of developing a new one for the next 5 years. Now, the new strategic plan, looking at the period, a number of key activities in terms of national electoral projects would fall within that time frame. For that reason, I think it's important that you are aware that we are working on a strategic planning process. We have already prepared what we call a 2024 electoral roadmap operations document. This document, in short, highlights the key lessons learned and challenges experienced during the implementation and execution of the electoral calendars for 2029 and 2020. In fact, the document I'm referring to here, which is basically an internal document, because it goes to the specifics of what we need to do in terms of our activities and the programs, the timelines, the responsible persons, that type of thing. It's important just to mention here that the strategic planning process is informed by the roadmap document that I'm referring to here, because it drills down in details. Now, what we intend to do is that early in the coming year, we will invite our stakeholders. We will invite our stakeholders. We don't want to give a specific date or time period right now, but I think as soon as most of you people are back to work, maybe close to the end of January or beginning Feb, around there, we will have an engagement with our stakeholders where we will present to you our strategic plan so that you get to understand the key focus areas of the Electoral Commission, the projects, the activities, and all of these things. Of course, the strategic document, planning document details a lot of things in terms of where we come from, where we are, and the period that lies ahead, and how we intend to attain a particular vision. So please, that is why we have shared this basic information with you, so that you can also basically hold us against what we are saying in some of these presentations and remarks that have been delivered. I just want to take you through what we deem to be the key focus areas of the Electoral Commission. Very briefly, when you get to see the strategic plan document itself, you will get to see the details. And as I'm saying, we are in the process of finalizing that. Once it's ready, it will be shared, and all stakeholders will be invited to a workshop so that we can run through our strategic plan for the next 5 years together, for you to be able to understand the mind of the Electoral Commission and basically the kinds of things that we are planning to do for the next 5 years. The first key focus area for the next 5 years of the Electoral Commission is exactly the legal framework issues. I have just taken you through some of the key highlights in terms of envisaged amendments to the Electoral Act. So the first key focus area in terms of our planning process, ladies and gentlemen, is the Electoral Act amendment process. Therefore, the review of the electoral framework and basically the finalization of the Electoral Act proposed amendments. Of course, with that is also the review of the existing framework in terms of the electoral codes of conduct, the regulations, and importantly, the electoral forms. I'm just sharing with you key highlights of what we mean or what we intend to do under each of the key focus areas. Going forward, is a very, very important item on the Commission's agenda. Some of you may have heard this particular initiative either in the news media and so forth, but it's an issue that relates to the operationalization of the independence of the Electoral Commission. I will take a moment just to share with you some basic information in terms of what it means, what this project is all about, and it really stems from the provisions of the Namibian Constitution. The Namibian Constitution in Article 94B states that there shall be an Electoral Commission of Namibia, which shall be the exclusive body to direct, supervise, manage, and control the conduct of elections and referenda. It goes further to say that the Electoral Commission of Namibia shall be an independent, transparent, and impartial body. And I want to place the emphasis on the word independent and therefore autonomous body. Independent, the expectation is that you function as independently and as autonomously as possible. Now, when you look at what the Constitution states, as I've just read to you here, and you look at that in relation to the current practical reality based on which the Electoral Commission operates, there is a very distinct difference. For example, when the Electoral Commission recruits its staff, such staff recruitment is subject to the provisions of the Public Service Act. So we are of the view that that current provision does not align to what is envisaged in the Namibian Constitution. If the Commission is independent, as provided for in the Namibian Constitution, the Commission therefore must be mandated to preside over the very important issue of staff recruitment. So this is just one basic example. Secondly, when you read the Public Service Act of Namibia, the Electoral Commission is classified as a government agency. Okay, as a government agency. We also feel that such classification is not within the letter and spirit of what the Constitution provides. In addition to that, the Commission, as part of this particular initiative, has taken an initiative to take a wide enough view with respect to the institutional independence of the organization, independence with respect to operational and administrative processes, but also independence as it relates to financial independence, the ability of the Commission to secure and have total control over the management and administration of its own budget. These are some of the key issues as part of this particular initiative that the Commission would be looking into, so that hopefully by the year 2024, this independence could be realized as, as stipulated in the Namibian Constitution. So I think the ultimate objective, really, and what we hope to achieve through this particular initiative is to reposition the Electoral Commission correctly within the Namibian state structure as provided for in the Namibian Constitution. So as I've said, some of you may have heard of this particular initiative, but these are just some of the highlights in terms of what we mean by this independence of the Commission and some of the things that we hope to do over the next few months. Of course, to meet the objectives of this particular initiative, it would require engagement and consultation, perhaps with other state institutions, and sometimes also perhaps working through a parliament and things like that. So, but we thought that as we explained the key focus areas of the Commission, this would be one such focus area as we look ahead in terms of our new strategic plan over the next 5 years. I'm moving on. We would be looking at electoral management processes as another key focus area of the Electoral Commission, which would include the review and strengthening of the voters register management systems and the infrastructure around that, looking at our capacity, our abilities, and so forth. We also, the Commission will be working towards strengthening collaboration with key state institutions or agencies, but importantly also stakeholders. We also want to look at the issue of enhancing voter verification processes during polling operations. So we'll be looking at a number of electoral management processes. But broadly, we would also be taking a look at our processes with a view to consider business process re-engineering in the manner we do certain things with respect to electoral operations in the field, but perhaps also our systems here at the ECN head office. Moving on is the issue of communication to improve customer service, our customer service function, and that speaks to the promise that we make to our stakeholders in terms of our capacity to deliver on our mandate, because that also leads to strengthening stakeholders' engagement. And I think I want to mention here that it is perhaps unavoidable that during off-peak periods, we tend to go into a slow motion kind of mode, and we don't engage frequently with our stakeholders, especially political parties, but also civil society organizations and other players within the electoral sphere. It is an intention of the Commission to find innovative ways, means, and perhaps platforms so that we can engage on a more frequent basis with our stakeholders, even during off-peak periods, so that we don't wait until 12 months before the next elections and then we start engaging. So it has to be a continuous, consistent process of engagement. And for these sorts of things, we also want to hear views from our political parties. What are the issues that we could be engaging on during off-peak periods so that we can derive maximum value in terms of our relationship being the ECN and our stakeholders. Moving on, the Commission would be strong on corporate governance issues. From our perspective, corporate governance basically is the framework of rules and practices that is developed by which the Commission will ensure accountability, fairness, and transparency. Such a framework would provide guidance on how the Commission can do a number of things. For example, to enhance oversight and accountability over policy formulation, enhance the capacity of the Commission in corporate governance in its oversight function over the electoral processes, strengthen the operations of the PLC platform, enhance the capacity of its employees in identifying and mitigating risks, develop internal audit mechanisms, the development of various policy documents. I want to mention to you that the Commission is currently, as part of building the corporate governance architecture for the organization, is currently looking at draft documents which we as Secretariat has put together in the area of ICT, performance management, risk management, the electoral operations policy, but also corporate communications functions. All these documents are meant to be the foundation of managing corporate governance issues of the organization. And we thought that it's important that we just mention that to you. In addition to that, I think I might be repeating myself here, but it's also that we have talked about the electoral management process already, relating to our capacity to manage the voters register, but also implementation of the electoral operations policy. I've talked about collaboration with stakeholders, but importantly, another aspect that we would be looking at as part of this key focus area is around enhancing our ability to manage our logistics. I know that some of you, we would always be engaged in heated discussions. Sometimes Ivan here would be calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning to discuss logistical issues around electoral processes. Is one area that the Commission will be focusing on, because clearly there are challenges. There are challenges on the part of the Electoral Commission to manage logistics around electoral processes. So as part of this focus area, it's important to have a clear understanding, because you cannot solve a problem if you don't have a clear understanding of the root causes of a particular problem. I just want to mention to you that one area that we have mentioned, that we have identified as a Commission, where we need to do better, perhaps with the assistance of our stakeholders, is the capacity and the competence of the people that we deploy to run our elections on the ground. That is one key area that the Commission would be looking into. The 14,000 people that we deploy in our electoral processes, their quality, their skills and competencies to deliver such a critical, delicate process is one area that would be focusing on, with a view to see how we can improve in that area, because at the end of the day, really the credibility of an election hinges on the people that you deploy at the ground operations level. It's a very big challenge, but maybe going forward, we would be engaging some of you and hopefully get your views on that and opinions. Another area would be in the area of public outreach as another key focus area of our strategic plan, which is basically the strengthening of civic education through stakeholders' collaboration. There is a difference, ladies and gentlemen, between voter education and civic education. The key difference there is that voter education is more election specific, or election program or election activity specific, in that you want to tell your voters what is required for them to be registered as voters. You want to tell them where are the registration venues, when you get there, what is required from you, what are the measures around COVID-19, those type of things. But civic education is another level, basically also where we need to see political parties engaging more on, so that when we are telling people to go and vote, people need to have the higher understanding of the importance of voting. You know, people need to understand, you have a different level of understanding of why should I make time to wake up early, 4 o'clock, and go and stand in the queue and for 2 hours to make my cross on a ballot paper. What is the significance of that process to my livelihood, for example, especially in local authority elections? regional council elections where we are consistently observing a decline in terms of voter turnout and increased voter apathy. And then as part of this particular key focus area, also to enhance, talking about basically the same thing, voter education. For special focus groups, we have a special focus groups. When we get to discuss our strategic plan, the draft with you, you will get to see details around the focus groups and the strategies that we intend to deploy to be able to reach out to these focus groups so that we can ensure that the program is impactful. Another challenge, and this ties into what I have said earlier, is that we need to find a way to have a more consistent graph in terms of engagement, in terms of providing voter education, in terms of civic education. Because that graph during off-peak, it goes like this, and then 2 months after national elections, it remains like this for the next 4 years. So we need to find a more consistent way of engagement, and we need to, and we would rely also on you as our primary stakeholders in terms of zeroing in on the issues and the programs that you think can keep the relationship alive during off-peak periods. And I think the same is true, especially when it comes to our ability for civic education, for voter education. In terms of administration, I'm drawing to a close now, which is another key focus area. The one important priority in that respect is the implementation of a new institutional structure for the Electoral Commission, but also enhance adherence to statutory legal frameworks in the area of budgeting and procurement. Now, my last slide speaks to a point that I have just touched on in my previous slide, and that relates to decentralization. I know that most of you on a number of occasions have expressed concern with regard to the Commission's ability to make available facilities in all our constituencies so that an eligible Namibian can just wake up in the morning and walk to an ECN office and obtain a voter's registration card. These are some of the things that the Commission ought to be doing as part of fulfilling its legal mandate. But of course, there are inhibiting factors. We don't register people on a daily basis in all our constituencies because we don't want to, but clearly there are factors. And one such factor relates to our permanent presence in our constituencies and our regions in terms of having physical infrastructure, in terms of having personnel functioning in those offices. Of course, the debate around that in terms of why that is the case goes very far. You know, it issues to do with national, the national budget, there being a moratorium on capital projects, and so many other things. But I think the Commission on its part has already started putting in place the necessary building blocks in place so that hopefully by the year 2024, we can see a situation where our citizens, at least at the regional level, would have the freedom to access the ECN head, regional office and obtain a voter's card, either for a new voter turning 18 years, or people can have, maximum benefit of going to an ECN office to obtain voter education material, that sort of thing. So as part of the Commission's plan for the next 5 years, decentralization is at the center of our planning process, because this would enhance operational efficiency, but also the mandate execution in terms of polling and registration processes, nomination of candidates, and importantly, voter and civic education. Of course, when you look at the issue of implementing the organizational structure, or even the decentralization strategy that we have in place, that we are looking into, these things cannot happen overnight. It really has to be a staggered, phased-in implementation process, depending on availability of funds, but also depending on the Commission's ability to be able to put in place certain things before we can realize some of these noble objectives. And as part of this strategy, what would be core to realizing decentralization would be, first and foremost, really the establishment and construction of regional offices, a matter that could be hampered or that is dependent on state resources being put at the ECN's disposal for us to be able to roll out our capital projects program across the 14 regions of the country. On that note, Chairperson, thank you very much. I think that is what I had to share with our audience, and I want to thank everyone for your attention. Thank you, Chair.